Hey everyone, quick look at this. See that? Almost 98% of you watching aren't subscribed yet. Subscribing is the best way to not miss any new infidelity stories and support what we do here. It's free and it makes a huge difference. Hit that subscribe button below. Okay, now to today's story.
You get to a certain age, and you think you've seen it all. Life settles into a rhythm, maybe a bit too much of one after Cody left. It wasn't a nasty divorce, not really. We just sort of drifted, like two boats that untied in the night and woke up going in different directions. After 30 years, that's a lot of drifting. So, there I was in this house that suddenly felt way too big and way too quiet. It was just me and the TV most nights. I'd make my little dinner, usually something easy, and then just sit. Sometimes I'd call my friend Martha, but even those chats started feeling a bit same old, same old. We'd talk about the grandkids, the weather, maybe some silly thing on the news. Nothing that really sparked. I was okay, I told myself. I was independent. I could handle things. And mostly I could. But then the kitchen faucet started leaking. Not just a little drip, drip, drip that you could ignore. This was a proper stream, wasting water and driving me nuts with the constant sound. I tried tightening it myself, watched a couple of videos online, but honestly, all those wrenches and pipes just looked like a foreign language to me. I even asked Martha's son, who's usually pretty handy, but he was busy with work. So I finally bit the bullet and looked up handyman services online. That's how I found Jared. His picture on the website was nice. He looked friendly, with a kind smile, and his rates seemed reasonable. So I called him up. His voice was deeper than I expected, a bit gravelly, but in a nice way. We set up a time for him to come over the following Tuesday. I remember feeling a little flutter of something, not exactly excitement, but different. It was something breaking the usual routine anyway. Tuesday morning, I made sure the house was tidy. You know how it is, even if it's just a handyman. Coming, you still want things to look presentable. I even put on a decent top, not just my usual comfy old sweater. The doorbell rang right on time. It was Jared. He was taller than I thought he'd be, with these kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wasn't a kid, maybe late 40s, early 50s, I guessed. A bit younger than me, but not by a huge amount. Kristina? He asked, his voice just like I remembered from the phone. Yes, come in, Jared, I said, stepping aside. He had a toolbox in his hand, a proper one, the kind my dad used to have. That gave me a little bit of a good feeling, like he knew what he was doing. He came into the kitchen and I showed him the leaky faucet. He took a look, fiddled with it for a second, and then said, "Yep, looks like the O-ring's gone. It's a pretty easy fix. Easy for him, maybe. For me, it felt like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. While he was working, he asked me a few questions about the house, just general stuff. How long I'd lived there, if I'd had any other problems. He was easy to talk to, not like some of those repair guys who just want to get in and out as fast as possible. He actually seemed interested. I found myself telling him a bit about the house, about how Cody and I bought it when we were first married, how we raised our kids here. It just sort of came out. And he listened, really listened, nodding and making little comments. It was nice. It had been a long time since I just had a casual, easy conversation with someone like that. Someone who wasn't family or a long-time friend. He fixed the faucet pretty quickly, and then he asked if there was anything else I needed help with. I hadn't really thought about it, but then I remembered the back door had been sticking a bit. So I showed him that, and he took a look. He said the hinges probably just needed some oil and maybe a little adjustment. While he was working on the door, I offered him a cup of coffee. He accepted, and we stood in the kitchen, sipping our coffee and chatting some more. About gardening, about the weather, about a funny thing that happened to him on his last job. It was just pleasant. Simple, but pleasant. And when he finally said he was done and gave me the bill, it felt almost too soon. He didn't overcharge me, which was a relief. As he was leaving, he smiled that kind smile again and said, "You take care now, Kristina. If you need anything else, just give me a call." And I said, "I will, Jared. Thank you." I stood at the door and watched him go, getting into his van. It was just a little thing, a leaky faucet and a sticky door. But somehow it felt like something more had been fixed that day than just the things around the house. There was a little crack in the wall I'd built around myself after Cody left, and I had a feeling that Jared, with his toolbox and his kind smile, had just chipped away at it a little bit, and honestly, it felt good. It was a few weeks after Jared came to fix the faucet and the door. Things had gone back to pretty much normal, same old routine. But every now and then, I'd think about him, about his smile, the way he listened. It was silly, I know. He was just a handyman. But there was something genuine about him. Then, one Saturday morning, I was trying to hang a picture in the living room. It was a picture of my grandkids, and I wanted it right above the fireplace. I measured and marked the spot, got my hammer and nail, and then I just couldn't seem to get the nail to go straight into the wall. It kept bending over. I tried a few times, got frustrated, and ended up putting the picture back on the shelf. Later that day, I was sitting in my chair, reading, when I looked over at the blank space above the fireplace. And for some reason, I thought of Jared. I remembered him handling his tools so easily, so confidently, and then it just popped into my head. Maybe he could help me hang it. It sounded a little silly, calling a handyman just to hang a picture. But then I thought, well, he did say to call if I needed anything, and technically I did need help with this. So I looked up his number again and gave him a call. He answered on the second ring. Jared's Handyman Services, this is Jared. Speaking. Hi, Jared, it's Kristina, I said. There was a little pause, and then he said, Kristina, how are you doing? Everything still working okay with the faucet? Yes, everything's great, thank you. Listen, I know this might sound a little silly, but I was wondering if you'd be free to come by sometime and help me hang a picture. I felt my cheeks getting a little warm as I said it. He chuckled a bit. Just a picture, huh? Yeah, I said, feeling a bit foolish. I just can't seem to get the nail in straight. Well, Kristina, I'd be happy to help. How about sometime next week? That would be great, I said, feeling a little rush of relief. We set up a time for him to come by on Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday came, and just like before, Jared was right on time. He came in with his toolbox, and I showed him the picture and where I wanted it to go. He just smiled and said, no problem, at all. He took out a level, marked the spot carefully, and then, with a few easy taps of the hammer, the nail was in the wall, straight as an arrow. He hung the picture for me, and it looked perfect. It was such a small thing, but it made me feel so happy. I offered him coffee again, and this time we sat at the kitchen table and talked for even longer. He told me a bit more about his work, about some of the interesting things he'd fixed in people's homes. He even told me a funny story about a time he accidentally locked himself in someone's bathroom. I laughed so hard. It was just easy, being around him. I found myself asking him questions about his life, too. He told me he was divorced a few years ago and had a couple of grown-up kids who lived in another state. He seemed a little lonely, I thought. Just like me. As he was getting ready to leave, he paused at the door. You know, Kristina, he said, if you ever need anything at all, even if it seems small, don't hesitate to call. I enjoy helping people out. I will, Jared, I said, and I meant it. After he left, the house felt quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. There was a little warmth in it now, a little spark. I kept looking at the picture hanging above the fireplace, and every time I did, I thought of Jared. It wasn't just about the picture being hung straight. It was about the kindness he showed, the easy conversation, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was still some connection to be found in this big, sometimes lonely world. It was a feeling I hadn't had in a long, long time. With Cody, things had become so routine. We rarely really talked, not like this. It was more about who was taking out the trash or what we were having for dinner. This with Jared, it felt different. It felt like maybe, just maybe, something unexpected was starting to bloom. After the picture-hanging incident, I didn't call Jared again for a while. I didn't want to seem like I was just making up things to get him to come over. But honestly, I found myself thinking about him more and more. It was silly, I knew. A woman my age getting all fluttery over a handyman. But there was just something about him that made me feel seen. Then, my old washing machine started acting up. It would make this terrible clanking noise during the spin cycle, like it was about to shake itself right out of the laundry room. I tried looking up videos online again, thinking maybe it was something simple. But this time, the pipes and wires looked even more confusing than before. I knew I could probably call a proper appliance repair place, but for some reason, Jared's number was the first one that came to mind. I hesitated for a day or two, trying to ignore the racket my washing machine was making. But the noise was getting worse, and frankly, I was a little bit worried it was going to break down completely. So I finally called him, Jared's handyman. Services, Jared speaking. Hi Jared, it's Kristina again, I said, feeling that familiar little warmth in my cheeks. Kristina, good to hear from you. Everything hanging straight? He asked, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I chuckled. Yes, the picture's perfect, thank you. But my washing machine is making a terrible noise. I was wondering if that's something you might be able to take a look at? Washing machines can be tricky, but I've tinkered with a few in my time. I'd be happy to come by and see what's going on. How about tomorrow afternoon? That would be great, Jared. Thank you so much. The next day, he came over, and right away he could hear the awful clanking sound when I ran a quick spin cycle. He listened carefully, then he got down on his knees and started looking underneath the machine. He was there for a while, poking and prodding, and then he said, I think it might be a loose drum. It's a bit of a bigger job than just tightening a screw, but I can probably fix it. He explained what he needed to do, and it sounded a bit complicated, involving taking some parts of the machine apart. He said it would take a few hours. I told him that was fine, and I offered him some lunch while he worked. We sat in the kitchen, eating sandwiches and talking. He told me about a time he tried to fix his own car and ended up making it worse, which made me laugh. He had a good sense of humor, Jared did. He could laugh at himself. While he was working on the washing machine, I found myself just watching him sometimes. The way he concentrated, the way his brow furrowed when he was trying to figure something out. He was good with his hands, you could tell, and there was a quiet confidence about him that I found attractive. There, I said it, attractive. It felt a little strange to even think that word in connection with a handyman I'd hired, but it was true. He eventually got the washing machine fixed. The clanking noise was gone, and it ran smooth as butter. I was so relieved. I offered to pay him, and he gave me a fair price. As he was packing up his tools, he turned to me and said, You know, Kristina, you've got a lovely home. You take good care of it. Thank you, Jared, I said, feeling a little pleased. Then he hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Maybe sometime when I'm not covered in grease, I could take you out for a cup of coffee? Just as friends, of course. My heart did a little skip. I'd like that, Jared, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, that crinkly-eyed smile. Great. I'll give you a call sometime next week. After he left, I went into the laundry room and just stood there, listening to the quiet hum of the washing machine. A cup of coffee, just as friends. But it felt like maybe, just maybe, it could be something more. Of course, then the doubts started creeping in. He was younger than me, I was pretty sure. Maybe by 5 or 6 years. Was that a big deal? And what? Would people think? My friends, my kids? They'd probably raise their eyebrows. But then I thought, why should I care what other people think? I was lonely. He seemed lonely. We enjoyed each other's company. What was the harm in a cup of coffee? I looked in the mirror and saw the lines around my eyes, the gray in my hair. I wasn't the young woman I used to be, but I also wasn't invisible. And maybe, just maybe, Jared saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself for a long time. The thought was both exciting and a little bit scary. But mostly, it felt like a little bit of hope had been rekindled. A hope I thought had gone out with Cody leaving. Ard called me a few days later, just like he said he would. He asked if I was free on Saturday afternoon for that cup of coffee. I said yes right away. I found myself looking forward to it all week. I even went out and bought a new blouse. Nothing too fancy, just something nice. Saturday came, and I felt a little bit like a teenager getting ready for a first date. I fussed with my hair, made sure my makeup wasn't too heavy, and kept checking the time. Jared arrived right on schedule. He was wearing a nice button-down shirt, and he looked really good. We went to a little coffee shop downtown. It was cozy and not too crowded. We found a table by the window and ordered our drinks. The conversation just flowed so easily. We talked about everything and nothing, about our favorite books, about funny things our kids had done when they were little, about our dreams for the future. I found myself laughing a lot. He had a way of making even the most ordinary things sound interesting. He didn't make me feel old or silly for being nervous. He was just himself, kind, genuine, and easy to talk to. I found myself relaxing and just enjoying his company. It was like I could finally just be me, without having to put on any airs, or pretend to be someone I wasn't. We talked for hours that afternoon. By the time we left the coffee shop, the sun was starting to set. He walked me back to my car, and as we stood there saying goodbye, he took my hand. It wasn't a romantic gesture, not exactly. It just felt natural. Like we were two people who had found a connection and weren't afraid to acknowledge it. We started seeing each other more after that, just for coffee at first, then maybe a casual dinner. He even came over and helped me with some more things around the house, fixing a leaky gutter, replacing a light fixture. But it wasn't just about the repairs anymore. It was about spending time together, about getting to know each other. I started to realize that the age difference, which I had been so worried about, didn't really matter when we were together. He made me feel young again, full of life, and I think maybe I brought a bit of stability and comfort to his life too. Of course, I couldn't help but wonder what other people thought. I hadn't told my kids yet. I wasn't sure how they'd react to me dating someone younger. And my friends. Well, Martha was always supportive, but I could imagine some of the other ladies at our book club might have something to say. But honestly, for the first time in a long time, I didn't really care. I was happy, and that's what mattered. Then, one evening when Jared was over for dinner, he told me about a business opportunity he'd been offered. It was a chance to buy into a handyman business in another state, closer to his kids. It sounded like a really good opportunity for him, a chance to be his own boss and build something for his future. But my heart sank a little when he told me. Another state. That was far away. We'd only just started to build something here. We talked about it for a long time that night. He was excited about the opportunity, but he was also worried about what it would mean for us. We hadn't known each other for very long, but the connection we had felt real, and neither of us wanted to lose it. I don't know what to do, Kristina, he said, looking a little lost. I took his hand. We'll figure it out, Jared, I said, even though I wasn't entirely sure how. If this is a good opportunity for you, you should take it. We can try to make it work long distance. People do it all the time, right? He squeezed my hand. But it won't be easy. No, I said. It won't. But nothing worthwhile ever is it? We talked about the challenges, the distance, the cost of travel, the time apart. It felt daunting. But we also talked about how much we cared about each other, about how we didn't want to just let this go. We decided that he would go and check out the business opportunity, and we would stay in close contact. We'd talk on the phone every night, and we'd try to visit each other as often as we could. It wasn't ideal, but it was a start. It was a way to keep the hope alive. And in that moment, that's all that really mattered. Jared moved a few weeks later. Saying goodbye at the airport was harder than I thought it would be. Even though we knew we'd see each other again, there was this empty feeling when he walked through security. The house felt even quieter than it did after Cody left. But this time, it wasn't a lonely quiet. It was more like a quiet anticipation. We talked on the phone every single night, sometimes for hours. We'd tell each other about our days, the good things and the bad. It was like he was still right there with me, even though there were miles between us. We also started planning visits. I flew out to see him a month after he moved. It was so good to see him again, to be able to hold his hand and just be in the same room. We spent a wonderful weekend together, exploring his new town and just enjoying each other's company. The long distance wasn't easy, though. There were times when I missed him so much it felt like a physical ache. And I know he felt the same way. There were missed birthdays, holidays spent apart, but we made it work. We learned to communicate better, to really listen to each other. When we talked, we found new things to do together, even when we were apart. We'd watch the same movies at the same time and then call each other to talk about them. We even started learning a new language together using an app. It was silly, but it gave us something to share. I saw Jared grow so much during that time. He was working hard at his new business, and he was so proud of what he was building. And he was always my biggest supporter. When I decided to finally take that pottery class I'd been thinking about, for years, he was the first one to cheer me on. He'd ask me all about my projects and tell me how talented I was, even when my creations looked more like lopsided ashtrays than actual bowls. And I grew too. I learned to be more independent, to rely on myself more. But I also learned how to let someone in again, how to trust and love someone fully, even with the distance. After about a year of the long distance, Jared came to visit me. We were sitting on my porch one evening watching the sunset, when he turned to me. He took my hands in his and looked me right in the eye. "Kristina," he said, his voice a little nervous. "I don't want to live this far apart anymore. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." And then he pulled out a little box from his pocket. Inside was a simple, beautiful ring. I think I just stared at him for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't expected it, not exactly then. But deep down, I think I had been hoping for it. "Yes, Jared," I finally managed to say, my voice a little shaky. "Yes, I'll marry you." We decided to get married, back in my hometown, in the little church I used to go to with my family when I was a girl. It was a small wedding, just our closest friends and family. My kids were there and they were so happy for me. They really liked Jared. Even Cody came, and he gave us his blessing. The wedding day was perfect. It wasn't fancy or over the top, but it was filled with so much love and joy. Seeing Jared standing at the end of the aisle, waiting for me, it was the happiest moment of my life. Standing there, holding his hands, saying our vows, it felt like everything had come full circle. Who would have thought that a leaky faucet and a sticky door could lead to this? To finding love again at this stage of my life, with someone I never would have expected. We still live in different states for now. Jared's business is doing well, and I still love my home. We travel back and forth as much as we can. Maybe someday we'll figure out a way to live in the same place full time. But for now, we're happy. We have each other. Looking back, it all seems a bit like a movie. The divorced woman finding love with the handyman. It sounds almost too simple. But life is funny like that, isn't it? It throws you curveballs when you least expect it. It shows you that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, at the most unexpected times. And that age really is just a number when it comes to the heart. I learned that even after heartbreak and loneliness, there's still room for new beginnings. That sometimes, the things that seem like small inconveniences can actually be the start of something beautiful. And that even when life feels monotonous and predictable, there's always the possibility of a surprise, a little spark that can reignite your spirit and fill your life with unexpected joy. You just have to be open to it. You have to be willing to take a chance. And sometimes you just need a handyman to fix more than just the things around your house. Sometimes you need someone to help fix your heart too. Years have passed now, since Jared first came to fix that leaky faucet. Sometimes when I'm sitting in my living room, looking at the picture of my grandkids above the fireplace, the one Jared hung so straight, it feels like a lifetime ago. And yet, the memories are still so vivid, so real. Like watching an old movie reel play in my mind. I remember those first few years after Cody left. The quiet in the house was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of his voice or his things, it was the absence of a shared life, a shared history. I felt like a book with most of its pages ripped out. I tried to fill the time, kept busy with friends and hobbies, but there was always this underlying feeling of emptiness, like a missing piece I didn't know how to find. Then Jared showed up, just a handyman, coming to fix a plumbing problem. I never would have imagined that such a simple thing could lead to such a big change in my life. He was just so kind, so easy to talk to, It wasn't like the polite, surface-level conversations you have with strangers. It felt genuine, like he actually cared about what I had to say. I remember feeling a little foolish when I called him back to hang that picture. It seemed like such a small thing to bother him with. But looking back, I think I just wanted to see him again. There was a lightness about him, a way of making me feel seen, something I hadn't felt in a long time. And then, of course, there was the washing machine. That clanky old thing was probably the best wingman I ever had. It gave Jared another reason to come over, another chance for us to talk and laugh. That cup of coffee he offered, it felt like such a small gesture at the time, but it was the start of everything. The age difference. That was something I worried about a lot at first. What would people think? Would they judge us? But as I got to know Jared, it just didn't seem to matter. He made me feel alive again, youthful in a way I hadn't felt in years. And I think I gave him something too. A sense of stability, maybe. A feeling of being truly appreciated. Long distance was tough, no doubt about it. Those goodbyes at the airport never got any easier. But we made it work. We learned to communicate, to trust each other even when we were miles apart. And those visits? They were like little bursts of sunshine in the everyday. Getting married to Jared, it was a leap of faith in a way. Starting over at my age, with someone new. But it felt so right. It felt like coming home. That little wedding, with our families and friends, it was perfect. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about celebrating the love we found in the most unexpected way. We still live in different states, and it's not always ideal. But we've built a life together, a life filled with love and laughter and support. We talk every day, and we see each other as often as we can. We've learned that distance can't diminish a true connection. Looking back on it all, I realized that life after divorce didn't have to be just about monotony and loneliness. It could be about rediscovering yourself, about finding new passions, and yes, about finding love again. Sometimes the people who come into our lives to fix the little things, a leaky faucet, a wobbly shelf, end up fixing something much bigger, something much more important. They can help us fix our hearts. And that's what Jared did for me. He came into my life when I least expected it, and he showed me that even after years of marriage and a painful divorce, there was still so much life and love left to experience. He taught me that age is just a number, and that true connection knows no boundaries. So, if you're reading this and you feel like your life has settled into a predictable, maybe even a lonely routine, take heart. You never know what's around the corner. Maybe it's a new hobby, a new friendship, or maybe, just maybe, it's a kind-hearted handyman with a toolbox and a smile that can change everything. Life has a funny way of surprising us, even when we think we've seen it all. You just have to be open to the possibilities, and trust that sometimes the most unexpected turns can lead you to the most beautiful destinations.